The story of the UFC begins in the early 1990s, a period when mixed martial arts were virtually unknown to the mainstream sports audience, and most combat disciplines existed in isolation, rarely tested outside of their traditional formats. At that time, boxing, wrestling, karate, judo, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu were all practiced independently, and fans and fighters alike had little understanding of how these styles would fare against each other in real combat. The idea of combining multiple martial arts into a single competitive arena was revolutionary, controversial, and inherently risky, as it challenged centuries of tradition and hierarchy within the world of fighting. UFC 1, held on November 12, 1993, at the McNichols Sports Arena in Denver, Colorado, was the first attempt to bring this concept to a global audience. The organizers wanted to answer a simple but provocative question: which martial art was truly the most effective in a real fight situation, and could one style dominate all others without restriction or limitation? The event was designed as a no-holds-barred contest, where fighters could engage with minimal rules, no weight classes, and almost no interference from referees. From the moment the fights began, UFC 1 captured the attention of fans worldwide. Spectators were enthralled by the unpredictability and raw intensity of the bouts, witnessing matches where size, strength, technique, and endurance were all tested simultaneously. Unlike traditional competitions, the outcome was uncertain until the very end, and the event's success immediately positioned the UFC as a revolutionary force in combat sports, laying the foundation for the modern era of mixed martial arts. In those early days, UFC fights were unlike anything the sports world had seen before, operating with almost no regulations and virtually no structure, which created an atmosphere of raw, unpredictable combat that both thrilled and shocked audiences. The concept of weight classes was entirely non-existent, allowing a fighter weighing 170 pounds to square off against an opponent over 250 pounds, producing extreme mismatches that tested not only skill but courage, endurance, and resilience. Fans were drawn to this unpredictability, eager to witness the clash of vastly different body types, styles, and strategies, where brute strength could collide with technique in ways that defied conventional expectations. Fighters in these early events competed with minimal equipment, often limited to just shorts and thin gloves, exposing them to greater risk while emphasizing the pure physicality of the sport. There were no standardized safety protocols, and bouts could continue indefinitely until a fighter submitted, was rendered unconscious, or their corner intervened to stop the match, making every fight a true test of stamina, strategy, and survival. This lack of structure created an environment where anything could happen, and victories often came through sheer determination, opportunistic technique, or the exploitation of an opponent's weakness in real time. Referees had very little authority to intervene, acting more as observers than enforcers, which further amplified the intensity and danger of each encounter. Injuries were common, and fighters often faced brutal punishment before a fight ended, highlighting the extreme risk inherent in early UFC contests. Despite the danger, these matches captivated audiences worldwide, establishing the UFC's reputation as a revolutionary, no-holds-barred arena that challenged traditional notions of combat, skill, and endurance. The first UFC events were a groundbreaking showcase of martial arts diversity, bringing together fighters from boxing, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, karate, judo, and other disciplines to compete in open, no-holds-barred combat. Each fighter represented not only their own style but the philosophy and techniques of their chosen discipline, creating a dynamic and unpredictable environment where the effectiveness of different martial arts could be tested under extreme conditions. Fans were captivated by the contrast between striking-based fighters and grapplers, as every matchup offered the potential for surprise and upset, and every fight became a lesson in skill, strategy, and adaptability. At the center of this revolution was Royce Gracie, a relatively small and unassuming practitioner of Brazilian jiu-jitsu who entered the octagon with a style unfamiliar to most spectators and opponents. Despite his size disadvantage, Gracie demonstrated the transformative power of technique over brute strength, using leverage, positioning, and submission holds to neutralize much larger and stronger opponents. His victories at UFC 1 and UFC 2 were not only stunning upsets, but also pivotal moments in combat sports history, proving that skill, strategy, and technical mastery could triumph over raw power. Gracie's success popularized Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on a global scale, inspiring countless practitioners and influencing the training approach of fighters across all disciplines. It also exposed the limitations of relying solely on striking or raw strength in real fights, highlighting the importance of grappling, control, and tactical awareness. These early UFC events, exemplified by Gracie's dominance, fundamentally shifted the understanding of martial arts and laid the foundation for modern mixed martial arts as a discipline where technique and versatility are paramount. Despite the unprecedented excitement and growing popularity of early UFC events, the organization faced intense criticism for what many perceived as excessive violence, a near-total absence of rules, and glaring safety concerns, creating a public image of the sport as dangerous and uncontrolled. Lawmakers, television networks, and athletic commissions expressed alarm at the brutal nature of the fights, often citing the potential for serious injury or permanent harm, and several states moved to ban the UFC entirely. The spectacle, which had captivated hardcore fight fans, was increasingly seen as a public threat, sparking heated debates about morality, ethics, and the limits of competitive combat sports. The media played a significant role in shaping public perception, frequently labeling the events as human cockfighting, a term that highlighted the perceived inhumanity and raw brutality of the competitions. Pay-per-view broadcasts, which were crucial to the UFC's revenue, struggled to gain traction as political pressure mounted, and networks were hesitant to air events in the face of criticism and potential regulatory consequences. The early controversy underscored the tension between the public's fascination with raw combat and the need for oversight, safety, and ethical standards, forcing the UFC to confront the realities of operating in a regulated environment. This mounting pressure eventually laid the groundwork for transformative change, as UFC organizers recognized that the sport could not survive in the mainstream without adopting formalized rules, introducing weight divisions, and implementing safety protocols. These reforms would eventually elevate mixed martial arts from an underground spectacle into a globally respected professional sport, where competition, skill, and fighter welfare could coexist alongside fan excitement and commercial viability. By the time UFC 12 took place in 1997, the organization had recognized the urgent need for more structure and fairness in its competitions, leading to the introduction of weight classes for the first time. Fighters were separated into lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight divisions. Although these categories were initially broad and allowed for some size discrepancies, they marked a critical shift toward creating more equitable matchups. This change was designed to reduce the extreme mismatches that had previously defined the early events, where a smaller, skilled fighter could face an opponent whose sheer size and strength might overwhelm them regardless of technique or strategy. The establishment of weight divisions also had a profound effect on fighters' approach to competition, as athletes could now specialize and train specifically for opponents of a similar physical stature. Strategy became more important, as fighters could anticipate the relative strengths and weaknesses of opponents within their division, allowing skill, technique, and conditioning to play a greater role in the outcome of fights. This change not only improved the quality of competition, but also made bouts more compelling and credible to spectators, who could now witness fairer contests where victories reflected preparation and technique rather than extreme physical mismatches. Around the same period as the introduction of weight classes, the UFC implemented time limits and rounds, bringing much-needed structure and predictability to its events, which had previously been characterized by open-ended fights of unpredictable duration. This change addressed both practical and safety concerns, as bouts in the early UFC could last indefinitely, placing immense physical strain on fighters while testing the patience and attention of audiences. By introducing defined time limits, organizers were able to make fights more viewer-friendly, ensuring that matches remained exciting and intense without devolving into marathon contests that exhausted participants or diminished spectator engagement. Initially, non-title fights were limited to a single 15-minute round, while championship bouts could extend to 30 minutes, providing a framework for endurance, strategy, and pacing, though still significantly longer than modern standards. This structure allowed fighters to plan their approach more effectively, balancing aggression and defense while conserving energy for the duration of the bout. These innovations marked the beginning of a broader shift toward prioritizing fighter safety and professionalism in the UFC, signaling that the organization was moving away from the lawless spectacle of its early years. By combining time limits with weight divisions and gradually codifying rules, the UFC created an environment where skill, technique, and strategy could shine, establishing the foundation for the modern, regulated sport that fans recognize today, while still preserving the excitement and intensity that made the early events so captivating. By establishing a uniform set of guidelines, the Unified Rules not only protected fighters, but also created a foundation for MMA to gain mainstream recognition, regulatory approval, and broader fan acceptance around the world. These rules standardized weight classes, ensuring that fighters would face opponents of similar size and strength, which reduced extreme mismatches and emphasized skill, technique, and strategy over sheer physical advantage. They also explicitly prohibited dangerous strikes, including headbutts, knees to a grounded opponent, and other fouls that had previously caused serious injuries. By clearly defining illegal techniques, scoring criteria, and referee responsibilities, the Unified Rules gave officials the authority to manage fights effectively and protect competitors, transforming the octagon from a chaotic arena into a professional sporting environment. A key feature of the Unified Rules was the introduction of the 10-point must system for judging, borrowed from boxing, which allowed fights to be scored fairly on a round-by-round basis. This innovation ensured that matches going the distance could be decided transparently and consistently, rewarding effective striking, grappling, control, and aggression. Overall, the Unified Rules marked the transition of MMA from a largely unregulated spectacle into a legitimate, respected sport where skill, discipline, and strategy were recognized and celebrated, laying the groundwork for the modern UFC we know today. Modern UFC fights are carefully structured to balance intensity, strategy, and athlete endurance, with non-title bouts consisting of 3 5-minute rounds and championship fights extending to 5 5-minute rounds, separated by 1-minute rest intervals. This format allows fighters to pace themselves, make tactical adjustments between rounds, and showcase a combination of explosive action and long-term strategy. Unlike the open-ended fights of the early UFC era, modern bout structure ensures consistency, fairness, and excitement, while also protecting fighters from extreme exhaustion and unnecessary physical damage. Today's UFC, athletes are fully licensed professionals, required to meet strict medical and regulatory standards before entering the octagon. Fighters undergo regular drug testing to ensure fair competition and are mandated to wear protective equipment such as standardized gloves, mouth guards, and groin protection, significantly reducing the risk of severe injury. These measures reflect the UFC's commitment to athlete safety, while still preserving the raw competitive nature that defines mixed martial arts. Training camps, weight management protocols, and medical clearances further emphasize professionalism and long-term career sustainability. Referees in modern UFC bouts are granted broad authority to intervene and stop fights when a competitor can no longer intelligently defend themselves, prioritizing safety over spectacle. In addition, trained medical teams are stationed ringside to immediately assess injuries and provide care when needed, ensuring rapid response to potential emergencies. This comprehensive safety framework highlights the UFC's evolution from a controversial spectacle into a highly regulated professional sport, where athletic excellence, discipline, and fighter well-being are central, allowing fans to enjoy high-level competition without the uncontrolled danger of the past. The strategic depth of modern mixed martial arts has grown significantly as a direct result of evolving rules and regulations, requiring fighters to master multiple disciplines rather than relying on a single fighting style. Today's athletes must train extensively in striking arts such as boxing and kickboxing, grappling systems like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling techniques that control where the fight takes place. This well-rounded preparation allows fighters to adapt to different opponents and situations, making each bout a complex chess match of timing, positioning, and decision-making rather than a simple test of toughness. Modern MMA rewards intelligence and technical precision as much as aggression, emphasizing control, defense, and efficiency alongside offensive output. Fighters are judged on effective striking, grappling dominance, cage control, and tactical awareness, encouraging calculated approaches instead of reckless exchanges. This evolution demonstrates that the modern UFC values skill, discipline, and adaptability over raw brutality, transforming fights into high-level athletic contests, where strategy often determines the outcome more than sheer physical power. Elite champions like Jon Jones, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Amanda Nunes perfectly illustrate this evolution, as they blend diverse techniques to dominate opponents within the boundaries of the rules. Jones uses creative striking and wrestling control. Khabib employs relentless grappling and positional mastery, and Nunes combines knockout power with elite ground skills. Their success highlights how modern MMA champions win, not by ignoring the rules, but by mastering them, proving that the sport has matured into a sophisticated and technically demanding competition. Famous UFC fights clearly illustrate the transformation of the sport, highlighting the contrast between the chaotic nature of early events and the strategic precision of modern competition. In the early era, bouts such as Ken Shamrock vs. Royce Gracie at UFC were defined by raw endurance, basic submissions, and minimal structure, with fighters relying heavily on toughness and instinct rather than refined game plans. These contests felt unpredictable and dangerous, as there were few rules to guide pacing, positioning, or referee intervention, making every moment a test of survival as much as skill. In contrast, modern matchups like Khabib Nurmagomedov vs. Conor McGregor at UFC 229 demonstrate how far the sport has evolved under a comprehensive rule set. That fight showcased calculated ground control, precise takedown chains, and disciplined aggression, with Khabib systematically breaking down his opponent through strategy rather than chaos. Every exchange reflected years of specialized training, rule awareness, and tactical planning, illustrating how modern fighters use the framework of regulations to maximize effectiveness while minimizing unnecessary risk. These iconic bouts highlight not only the technical evolution of mixed martial arts, but also the profound impact of rules on fighter safety and competitive fairness. Regulations ensure balanced matchups, allow referees to protect athletes, and give judges clear criteria for scoring, enhancing audience understanding and appreciation. Together, these changes demonstrate that the UFC has matured into a sophisticated professional sport, preserving its intensity and excitement while replacing disorder with strategy, skill, and sustainable competition. The evolution of UFC regulations played a critical role in allowing the organization to expand beyond the United States and establish a truly global presence in the world of sports entertainment. With standardized rules, safety protocols, and professional oversight in place, the UFC gained approval from athletic commissions across Europe, Asia, South America, and the Middle East, enabling it to host events in major international markets. This global expansion attracted millions of viewers worldwide, transforming mixed martial arts from a niche spectacle into a mainstream, billion-dollar industry with worldwide recognition. Modern broadcasting platforms have further accelerated this growth, as television networks, streaming services, and pay-per-view providers now confidently showcase UFC events under a controlled and regulated framework. Audiences can enjoy elite-level competition knowing that fighters are protected by medical teams, referees, and standardized rules designed to minimize extreme risks. High-definition broadcasts, expert commentary, and global distribution have elevated the viewing experience, making modern UFC events accessible and engaging for fans across different cultures and time zones. Commercial opportunities have also flourished alongside this regulatory evolution, with sponsorships, merchandising, and international fighter rankings, reinforcing the sport's professionalism and legitimacy. Major brands now associate themselves with the UFC, a sharp contrast to the early 1990s, when the organization struggled for acceptance and operated on the fringes of mainstream sports. This shift from a chaotic underground spectacle to a globally respected enterprise underscores how regulation and structure were essential in transforming the UFC into one of the most influential combat sports organizations in the world. In summary, the journey from UFC 1 to the modern era represents a powerful story of adaptation, survival, and continuous evolution shaped by public scrutiny, regulatory pressure, and the natural maturation of mixed martial arts as a competitive discipline. What began as an experimental spectacle with minimal oversight was forced to evolve in order to survive, responding to criticism while preserving the core challenge that defined the sport. This balance between change and tradition allowed the UFC to grow without losing its identity. The sport has transitioned from near-lawless contests, defined by the absence of weight classes, limited rules, and unpredictable outcomes, into a structured and regulated professional competition recognized across the globe. Modern UFC fights are governed by standardized rules, clear scoring systems, and strict safety protocols, ensuring fairness and consistency for athletes and fans alike. These changes shifted the focus away from sheer brutality and toward strategic planning, technical mastery, and intelligent execution inside the octagon. Despite this transformation, the modern UFC has preserved the true spirit of combat, continuing to celebrate resilience, preparation, and the will to win. Fighters are now admired not only for their toughness, but for their discipline, adaptability, and skill across multiple fighting styles. Audiences can appreciate the artistry of mixed martial arts, understanding the tactics and techniques at play without the fear of uncontrolled violence. Despite this transformation, the modern UFC has preserved the true spirit of combat, continuing to celebrate resilience, preparation, and the will to win. Fighters are now admired not only for their toughness, but for their discipline, adaptability, and skill across multiple fighting styles. Audiences can appreciate the artistry of mixed martial arts, understanding the tactics and techniques at play without the fear of uncontrolled violence. This evolution has elevated MMA into a respected global sport, proving that structure and safety can coexist with intensity, excitement, and authenticity. The evolution of rules in the UFC has had a profound impact on fighter longevity, significantly reducing the risk of severe and career-ending injuries that were common during the early no-holds-barred era. In the sport's early days, fighters often absorbed extreme punishment without referee intervention, medical oversight, or clear stopping criteria, leading to long-term physical damage. Modern regulations now prioritize athlete health, ensuring that fighters can compete at a high level without unnecessarily sacrificing their long-term well-being. Today, strict weight management protocols prevent dangerous mismatches and reduce stress on fighters' bodies, while mandatory medical clearances ensure that athletes are physically fit to compete before stepping into the octagon. Training standards have also improved dramatically, with fighters benefiting from professional coaching, sports science, and recovery techniques that were largely unavailable in the early UFC era. These advancements allow athletes to train smarter, recover faster, and perform more consistently throughout their careers. This modern approach stands in sharp contrast to the experiences of early UFC fighters, many of whom endured brutal, unregulated matches that left lasting physical consequences. Without protective rules or enforced stoppages, fighters often pushed beyond safe limits, shortening their careers and limiting their ability to compete long-term. Today's fighters are able to build legacies, defend titles, and inspire future generations, proving that the evolution of UFC rules not only improved safety, but also ensured the sustainability and growth of mixed martial arts as a professional sport. The comparison between the early UFC era and the modern sport reveals a compelling balance between raw spectacle and structured safety, highlighting how mixed martial arts has evolved without losing its core excitement. Early UFC events functioned as bold experiments, captivating audiences with their unpredictability and intensity, yet placing fighters at significant risk due to minimal rules and limited protection. These contests delivered unforgettable moments, but the absence of safeguards often made victory come at a severe physical cost. In contrast, the modern UFC emphasizes calculated aggression and strategic mastery, operating within a clearly defined and standardized rule set that prioritizes fairness and athlete safety. Fighters now approach competition with detailed game plans, technical precision, and an understanding of how to maximize effectiveness within the rules. Aggression is no longer reckless, but controlled and purposeful, allowing athletes to showcase their abilities while minimizing unnecessary danger. Today's fighters are celebrated not only for winning, but for how they win, with fans and analysts appreciating technical skill, tactical awareness, and adaptability across multiple fighting disciplines. This shift has elevated mixed martial arts into a respected and sophisticated sport, where intelligence, preparation, and execution are as valued as physical strength. By successfully balancing spectacle with safety, the UFC has proven that structure enhances competition rather than diminishing it, creating a sport that is thrilling, sustainable, and admired worldwide. Fans of modern UFC events enjoy a far more engaging and informative viewing experience, supported by expert commentators who break down techniques, explain scoring criteria, and analyze fight strategies in real time. This guidance helps audiences understand the complexity of mixed martial arts, allowing both casual viewers and seasoned fans to appreciate the technical battles unfolding inside the octagon. Instead of simply watching strikes and takedowns, fans can now follow the tactical decisions that shape the outcome of each round. Advancements in technology have further transformed how fights are presented, with instant replays, detailed analytics, and high-definition broadcasts providing deeper insight into fighter performance. Slow-motion replays highlight key moments, while statistical data showcases striking accuracy, takedown success, and control time, offering a clearer picture of how fights are won or lost. In contrast, early UFC broadcasts relied almost entirely on the shock value and raw violence of the contests, offering little context or explanation for what was happening inside the cage. This evolution in presentation and regulation has enhanced both fighter safety and fan enjoyment, ensuring that excitement is driven by skill and strategy rather than uncontrolled brutality. Clear rules, informed commentary, and advanced technology allow MMA to grow sustainably as a global sport, attracting new audiences while retaining longtime supporters. By balancing education, entertainment, and safety, the UFC has created a viewing experience that respects the athletes and deepens appreciation for the art and science of mixed martial arts. In conclusion, the UFC's transformation from a raw, no-rules spectacle into a highly regulated and professional sport stands as a powerful example of adaptation, innovation, and strategic evolution within combat sport. What began as an experiment driven by curiosity and controversy has grown into a globally respected organization by embracing structure without sacrificing intensity. This ability to evolve allowed the UFC to survive political pressure, public criticism, and safety concerns while continuing to deliver compelling competition. From Royce Gracie's early demonstrations of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which proved that technique could overcome size and strength, to the modern dominance of multifaceted champions like Israel Adesanya and Valentina Shevchenko, the sport has consistently showcased the value of skill, preparation, and adaptability. Modern fighters are no longer defined by a single discipline, but by their ability to blend striking, grappling, movement, and strategy within a clear set of rules. This evolution reflects the maturation of athletes, coaching methods, and the sport's competitive philosophy. The journey of UFC rules represents far more than regulatory change. It symbolizes the growth of mixed martial arts into a disciplined, respected, and sustainable sport. By prioritizing safety, fairness, and competitive integrity, the UFC has ensured that fighters can build lasting careers and fans can appreciate the artistry of combat without unnecessary risk. This transformation proves that structure enhances excellence, and that true evolution lies in preserving the spirit of competition while elevating its standards.